All right, welcome everyone to our latest ALTA Insights webinar. These are our free presentations offered on issues important to title and settlement professionals. I'm Jeremy Yohe, ALTA's Vice President of Communications, and today we've got a great webinar lined up to discuss how telling your story effectively can not only help grow your business, but showcase your culture, attract new talent, and hopefully maybe at the same time advocate for your industry. Before starting, I do need to touch on a few housekeeping items. All participant lines are muted for today's discussion. If at any time you have a question, please submit them in the questions box. We'll hold a little time at the end for Q&A. As an added benefit, the webinar is being recorded. All recordings of ALTA webinars are on the website. You can go to alta.org/webinars. That's alta.org/webinars. And you'll also get an email tomorrow with a link to the recording. You can also download a copy of today's presentation from the handout section in the GoToWebinar window pane. You'll also find a pretty nifty two-page guide that you can download to help you tell your story. There, speakers put in. We'll get into more detail, but there's lots of good information that you can copy and paste and then modify to really tailor it to your organization, help amplify what you have to say. We do need to thank Westcor Land Title Insurance Company for sponsoring today's ALTA Insights presentation. And before we get to the webinar, we do have a short commercial from Westcor. All right, thank you, Westcor. Hopefully everyone could see and hear that. It's always a little bit of a hope and prayer that the technology works. And with that, I'll turn the remarks and the introduction to the speakers over to ALTA CEO, Diane Tom.
Thank you, Jeremy. And I too would like to thank Westcor for all their support on behalf of ALTA. And welcome everyone. I hope you're staying safe, warm, dry. You just never know what's being thrown our way these days. And as you know, the results of the 2020 election has meant to us in Washington that there are many new faces in Congress. There's new department heads on the regulatory side, and probably a different attitude towards some of the supervision and enforcement of the last administration. Your business benefits from policymakers having a deeper understanding of our industry's people, processes, and purpose. Our speakers today, which I'm very excited to introduce, are going to help you understand why stories are effective, how to tell your story, and more importantly, how to share it. Both of our speakers today were instrumental in developing ALTA's Tell Our Story campaign that we launched last year. First time I met Mary O'Donnell was when we were meeting to plan for 2020 2020, and this was the first thing she said. We really need to tell our story. Alta does a great job, and the industry does a really good job of talking to each other, but not so much to everybody else, the folks who really don't know who we are. So we launched this effort last year. It's an ongoing public awareness effort to communicate with targeted audiences describing who we are and the value we bring. When we say targeted audiences, that can mean elected officials. Sometimes we use the word influencers. That could mean folks who write about our industry. Also, we want to talk about people who can speak on behalf of our industry, anybody who's willing to articulate what it is we do to folks who can affect how we do our business. Last year's campaign resulted in 4.2 million impressions, served to members of Congress, district office political influencers, and Alta social media followers. 1 million of those impressions led to some engagement with the video, which is pretty amazing, considering we all remember what happened last year. Since the campaign was highly targeted to Washington policymakers, it's providing valuable visibility to our industry, particularly as everybody's in front of their screens more than they would have been if we weren't in a pandemic. And today, to walk you through this campaign and how you can tell your story, it's my pleasure to introduce our speakers. First, joining us is Mary O'Donnell, CEO and President of Westcord Land Title Company. As I mentioned, Mary was instrumental, critical in helping spearhead and launch this effort on behalf of Alta Tell Our Story campaign in 2020 during her year as Alta president. Came up with the idea, helped identify who was going to do it, and then really stayed involved throughout the process. And as some of you may remember, we were very fortunate to have been in Colorado for our springboard last year, because a lot of the footage that we were able to tape, we have been able to use, because otherwise we couldn't have done this. And then secondly, I'd like to introduce Jim Scott Polsinelli. Jim is the Chief Creative Officer for Marathon Strategies. He's a member of Marathon's executive leadership team, and Jim Scott is a master at communicating visually and bringing developing original content. They have been an amazing partner for us, and we're excited that you're going to have these two experts today. And so now I'll turn it over to Mary O'Donnell and Jim Scott. Take it away, guys.
Thank you, Diane. Really appreciate it. And Jeremy, and thrilled to be here with Jim Scott today. We've sort of done this double act once before, Jim, and I think we're excited to share some information with you guys today. Like Diane said, when we sat down, and I think it was right as Diane actually even joined Alta, and we talked about the what we wanted to achieve. And you know, one of the things that I suggested to Diane was, you know, we've got to not only tell our story, we have to put a face and a feel to our story. And you know, as title people, we're really good at talking to each other, and we're really, really good at talking about what we do. But we don't always think about actually talking about who we are and the kind of industry that we are, and that we're also proud to be part of. So back in, gosh, it seems like 100 years ago now, back in late 19, we all got together and said, you know what, this is an initiative that we really need to think through and we need to think about. And we realized that in order to do this, we needed to look for a company from what we quaintly in our industry call the outside world, right? Who could actually, you know, put a face and a story to us. And we did an RFP in late 19. And we were very, very fortunate that Marathon and Jim Scott came to us. And frankly, just as a backdrop, you know, we were so impressed with what Jim and his group did in such a short period of time, just to show us how they might think about telling the story of the industry. And at that time, this was back pre-COVID, so some of you actually may remember pre-COVID. I don't know about you, it seems further and further away the longer we go through this, but We really were saying, hey, you know, we got to tell our story. And one of the questions that came up, and a good question from Jim Scott in the group, was, who do you want to tell the story to, right? And who are we dealing with? And at that time, as Diane indicated, you know, we were really saying, hey, you know, we've got a low interest rate environment, we've got booming marketplace, you know, we've got this sort of outside press that sort of says to us, hey, you know, it's a big bad industry, and what do we really do? And we talked about, you know, the regulators and the GSEs and getting our story told, and really getting your story told, right? This is the story of who you are, right? And what you do in your communities every day. And that was the drive behind this whole concept. And so we went into early 20 with this great thought and process ahead, and Jim's going to talk a little about how he put this campaign together and in a few minutes. And we thought about, gosh, yeah, you know, we had this whole plan for 20, and it was going to be awesome, right? And you know, we, as Diane indicated, you know, we got together at Springboard, and for those of you who were there with us in Denver, and we did some video shoots that the marathon wanted to utilize to achieve the story that we told them we needed to tell. This was the late 19, early 20. And then you know what happened. So I know Jim will kind of go into how we pivoted and why we needed to pivot. And again, you know, all that video was really to, you know, hey, tell our story to legislators and Fannie and Freddie and regulators. And, you know, and I used to always say, you know, put a face on it, put a face to the industry. And that's really what we were, you know, we were trying to achieve, and what we really wanted to get done as part of this campaign. And we also recognized, and I think this is important as you think about how do you tell your story for your company, we also recognize it's not a one and done, right? It wasn't going to be, hey, let's do a campaign for 9 months and, you know, we'll get all the great story out there and then we're done, right? We recognize that this was a long-term investment from the association and for the industry. And so we had this sort of great sort of 2+ year plan of how we would grow the story, and it would grow on itself. And I think over the last year, as most of us have spent way too much time in front of screens, right? I think we know now how important that consistency and ongoing nature of telling your story, how important that is, right? We all have an attention span of about this much, right? So I think as we talk today, I think Jim will be able to share some really great information with you about, you know, how to think about your story and your campaigns and how you might move forward, you know, from your own story and your own campaign. So, you know, with that said, that's where we sat. We sat in Denver. We had some good video. We had these great thoughts and ideas about telling the industry story and our membership story. And we all flew home from Denver, ready for great, you know, wonderful ongoing things. And then you know what happened next. So I'm going to turn it to Jim Scott, because at that point, we needed to do some pivoting. So Jim, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Mary. Thanks, Diane and Jeremy, for allowing me to be on here today. It's a real pleasure, and we've really enjoyed working with you all over the past year and a half, and look forward to the future. It's been wonderful, and we believe in the stuff that you do. And what's also really truly amazing is that everybody, all the agents, everybody who've worked with, they're always passionate about title protection and title estate and title insurance. And that's not always the case with a lot of our clients, and frankly, that makes it easier on our part to tell your story. But we always tell people that, you know, everybody, before we begin any engagement, there's two sides. If you want to tell your story, you know, we have to find, like Mary said, who is listening, and how can we create a story that resonates with the listener, you know, and we had to figure out who that listener is. As we've learned, it's more legislative, it's a little more advocacy focused, because we need legislators to understand what title insurance is and how important it is. You know, the real estate is, the realtors have a gazillion amount of dollars that they spend every year advertising their side of things. Same with the mortgage bankers, but title insurance is lesser known. But the fact is, it's crucial. You know, every one of us who is a property owner knows that when you close a house, you have to go to the title agency to sign it, and you get like a nice pen or something like that says title agents. You know, I mean, I got several nice pens in my house from the title agents And that's always a nice giveaway. But more than that, what we found when we worked, when we saw the RFP, is that this idea kept bubbling up. You know, we would hear a couple things. One, it was about protection, 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 protection. And then we saw this, it just sat in front of us, you know, a real estate title agent. I mean, the very name of a title is fascinating. You know, you can apply it to so many different visual and verbal and written and video platforms. So our campaign idea off of telling our story was our title is protection. We thought it was simple. We thought it could cut across all barriers. We thought it could, people would resonate with it. And we've seen so far that is the case. And so as we decided to roll out this brand new campaign, our title is protection, and we filmed it in Springboard, you know, as the poet and philosopher Mike Tyson likes to say, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And that face was COVID. Yeah, no surprise there. But what we learned is that in the what your industry was doing was that you were really protecting communities. Not only were you figuring out new ways to digitize a closing in the age of lockdowns, shutdowns, quarantining, social distancing and masking, you figured out how to notarize things digitally. You know, you were doing drive-throughs, you were getting business done, because as the industry was booming, you still had something to sell. People wanted homes like never before. They wanted to relocate. You know, they wanted to move because they wanted to flee the big cities. They wanted to move to a big city. They wanted a house where they could work that could be for the next year. So your industry was very instrumental into COVID, and it was one of the shining success stories. And also at the same point, we wanted to demonstrate, we heard from your members that you were giving to food banks, you were giving to frontline workers, you were giving to nurses and things like that. And so we were like, you know what? We really need to step back and listen to what's going on in the marketplace. And that's I think one asset that, you know, any agency can provide is essential objectivity, but we have to listen to what's going on. We can't be tone deaf. And so instead of really launching the overall our title is protection campaign, we went with the COVID campaign. And let me show you that first campaign. And Mary, can you see the screen?
Yes.
Cool, awesome.
For over 100 years, we've been in the business of protecting American homebuyers. Yet protection is taking on a whole new meaning during COVID-19.
Each individual transaction we do is all a part of making up a safer community.
We're coming up with safer and more innovative ways to refinance or close on a home.
We want to keep the community safe, our agents, customers, as well as the employees.
We're being more vigilant than ever against wire transfer fraud and phishing scams.
We really try to educate the real estate agents and the lenders to make sure that they are educating consumers.
We're using advanced technology to ensure that they are sending the wire from the right source.
And we're continuing to give back to communities who are being hurt the most by the pandemic.
We're members in your community and every community all over America.
Whether that is coaching or teaching or volunteering on nonprofit boards.
In the schools, in the churches, in local charities, food banks,
everything we do, we try to do to benefit the community.
Whether buying your home for the first time or refinancing, we're here to protect you.
Our #1 title is protection.
Today, tomorrow, forever.
Okay, so we took your idea of our title is protection, and if that's the umbrella, well, how could it fit in? And it turned out, you know, what you were doing for COVID worked perfectly. And so from there, we just built upon that. And what was nice about that video is that it really established the tone for the campaign and really told your story in a way that showed your advocacy that brought the community together. And we pushed it out over a lot of digital platforms and created a lot of digital ideas that I'll show you in a second. Like, for example, right here, these are some digital static GIFs that are very much advocacy in nature, but demonstrate what's happening in the marketplace right now. It was acknowledging where we were as a country and where you were doing to step up and help protect your communities. And they did very, very well. But at the same time, there was a very subtle, you could say subtle and not so subtle, but the idea about selling what you did, drive-through closings made it easier for people to close on their house. And also, it also made it safer too. And then up in the right-hand corner, you see frontline workers that you were giving food to. You were helping out in the community. And we are heartened to know that there are so many agencies throughout the entire country who are in every community and doing wonderful things. So we got a lot of photos, we got a lot of videos, we got a lot of B-roll from you, and we did our best to use it. And it turned out really well in that initial phase of the campaign. But, as Mary said, once the spigot's on, you have to continue to refresh it. You have to continue that drumbeat. So over time, we launched the brand awareness campaign about what title protection is. And we created a series of print ads. My title is goalie. My title is dreammaker, guardian, offensive lineman, bodyguard, closer, coach. These were all played off the idea of our title is protection. And you can see that we took your really dominating colors of red, and then we added almost a shadow behind there of who that person is. So Bill Birding, we found out that Bill loves to play hockey, and so he's a perfect hockey goalie. And then there's Mary. When you look at her, you realize she's intimidating and tough, so you're gonna naturally put a knight behind her. And then other people, we have coaches and closers, but we wanted to tell the story from your point of view. Why is it that you're a title agent? What do you do? And we wanted to give geographic references throughout the country of, how can you bring your benefits, your features, and tell them to specific audiences in a different way that makes it engaging and exciting and very emotional. Because you can easily see, some people could say, well, I don't know what title insurance is, but I just signed a stack of papers. Well, behind those papers, there's a story. And every story can be told in a very engaging and emotional way.
And Jim, if I could add, I think you're spot on. I think for our membership, a lot of things we think about is, again, telling your story about who you are, right? So people do business with people, right? So when people say, oh, I don't really know what title insurance is, but I know who Bob is. Bob's my local guy who I get on my closings for. And so that's where this campaign, I think, for us at Alta resonates, because we know our members individually and we're close, right? As an industry, we're very tight knit and it's very people orientated. And so this campaign, I think, was spot on because it really focused on the person as opposed to the activity. And I think as you think about your campaigns in your local communities, people do business with you because of who you are and because of what you do, not necessarily because your policy is better than somebody else's. So it was I think spot on for where we need to be thinking about ourselves on a go forward.
And as you look at these executions, I'd like you to see yourselves in them. What is your title? What do you tell people? Because we want to pick their interest, and you want to get them to read your story and make them feel that you're actually protecting them, which you are. So as we began to roll this campaign out in, I think it was third quarter last year, after we went through the COVID. When I say when we launched the first part of the campaign, we got people's attention, but we needed to broaden it because you can't just keep saying the same thing over and over. You have to have different executions. And as we started the entire overall campaign for the past year, like Diane said earlier, the impressions were great. And and that's important. We got a lot of clicks to your website, and we had engagements on social media. So that means when somebody sees Facebook, they either like it or they respond to it. And what we also found, which I'll show a little bit later, is how a lot of the members out there were forwarding the platform, forwarding a lot of the posts to their friends, to their social networks, and it sort of becomes that pond where you throw a rock and the ripples continue to expand, and so you're reaching more people. And that's what we want to do. We want to expand that reach. And it's also important too, because you don't have endless amounts of money. We've got a finite bucket of money that we work very hard to spend smartly. And I've told clients before, we can't outspend if we can't outspend the competition, we need to outsmart them. So if you look at State from Jake Farm, that's a nice campaign, but they're advertising on the Super Bowl. That's not going to happen to Alta or its members. There's no really real point to that. But what we can do is we can target legislators. We can target specific, communities or counties in America that have an issue that we need to raise awareness or get somebody to think different about something. And what's also important, especially in 2021, is that as we extend the campaign, you have a new Congress, you have new Senate, you have new House, you have new president, you have new staff, you have new everybody. So your story can't just continue to rest in the laurels of last year. You have to talk to new administration officials so that they understand what's happening with you and how you impact the communities that you serve on the state and local level. I mean, because they like to know how big the industry is, how many employees you have. Legislators love that. And when you walk in with a flyer that says what you do and how you can help their industry and how you put people to work and how strong you are, that makes your story all the more important. And so for example, I was talking about advocacy here, and through, I know Chris Morton and Jeremy, they've been talking with a lot of legislators, and this is just one of the many snapshots that you've all done over the past year, is that you have to educate legislators where they are. And the crux of what's going to happen this year, there's going to be a lot of educating new members and continuing the momentum with the policymakers, so they understand what a title insurance is, so that if something comes across their desk, they will remember that they need to protect you like you're protecting them.
And I think if you think about advocacy, it's very visual today, right? Because everything's remote, everything's done on, Zoom and things like we're doing today, and GoTo and all of those good things. And so that visual is so important, but also you have a very short period of time to tell that story. And as Jim Scott said, with a whole new group in Washington right now, it's going to be more important than ever that we continue to expand this program from the association side to really get in front of that story. And one thing I would add is if you ask yourself, is it effective? You can actually look back and know how effective it was, because back when Marathon launched the COVID campaign, right? That was right at the time where we were trying to figure out, can we convince Washington that title is an essential business? And that campaign was very helpful in giving them a visual. And the whole theory of protection, when somebody says, what do you do? And you say, well, I protect people's homes. That actually means something, as opposed to, well, I search public records and I make sure it's clear and then I get to the policy. So I think this telling our story for this year in the environment we're in right now is going to be even more critical.
Absolutely. And also what was really amazing, what happened during COVID, there seemed to be a shift. And I think, Mary, you can talk about this a little bit better than I do. But the fact is that there was a large pivot within Alta that said, hey, we're seeing the good deeds that are happening from what our members are doing. So that actually, we're going to not just monetize it, we're going to take that idea and make it a thing. And that's where, phase 2 of the campaign sort of pivoted a little bit in the fall, was to launch the Good Deeds Foundation.
Yeah, thank you. It was such an exciting year, and frankly, the Good Deeds Foundation really came from a lot of the stories that we were getting from our members, some of which you showed in some of the ads before. So, the drive-through closings, the supporting of the local food banks, the supporting of the essential workers. And I think what we realized during the year was we did have a campaign to tell your story, but actually what we were really doing was sort of institutionalizing and then amping up the story you've been telling every single day. And that's what sort of led to the beginning of the Good Deeds Foundation. We felt like there was so much positive that was happening in that local area that as an association, we wanted to institutionalize and amp up what you guys were doing in that local area. And so the board got together and we agreed to establish the Good Deeds Foundation, which I think, Jim Scott, if I get this right, it was sort of like midsummer-ish, like July-ish, that we sort of said, hey, let's go do this. And, the name actually came from some of the social media work that Jeremy and Megan and some of the guys were doing. You all may remember we had the hashtag Good Deeds, and you guys were sending information in, and we thought, what no better name than to establish this foundation. And the idea behind the foundation, again, was to sort of centralize and institutionalize on a national basis what you were doing locally and be able to give back to your local communities through centralized fundraising. So, you know, we started that in July. We started the launch quietly. We were doing the official launch at Virtual Alta One, which happened in October. You know, all I can say is the response to the campaign, and we asked Marathon to, you know, just help us with the launch of the campaign, help us with the visual, help us with the messaging, and you know, just really help us get this off the ground. And it truly has been just an incredibly successful campaign. You know, we had a internal goal when we started of trying to raise $250,000 in the first round that we could give back to the community. And I'm just still astonished to say we raised a little over $550,000 in the first round. And just amazing. We're about to hopefully at Springboard or close to Springboard make our first official grant after the one that was made at Alta One to the Tunnels to Towers Foundation. But Jim, I don't know if you want to talk a little about how you guys helped us with good deeds and kind of the ideas that you came up with, because I think it's been really helpful to grow and push the campaign. And I will tell you, this campaign also has been hugely supported when we do talk to our regulators. I think the fact that we as an industry take care of the customer and give back to that local community, you give back to the local community. I have not done one of these virtual conversations where people are like, well, that's just incredible. I mean, can you tell me about fill in the blank, whatever community that senator or congressman is representing? They say, well, what's happening and what is going on in that community in terms of give back? But Jim Scott, I'll turn it to you.
Great. And to follow that last point, Mary, you cannot overestimate how important it is when you speak with a legislator and tell him or her that what you're doing with an altruistic foundation like Good Deeds matters. Because so many people go to legislators and say, hey, this is about me, this is my story, I do this, I do this. But if they see that you have a selfless organization attached to what you do, they love to hear that story. And so, and that's really important to bring that to mind. And when they came to us with the name of Good Deeds, immediately, we just thought that was a phenomenal idea. And visually, you can kind of see there how we kept it real simple. It's branded by the American Land Title Association. It's the same colors, but we felt that there needed to be some sort of twist visually on how we link and really demonstrate what good deeds are. And so essentially you see the two hearts interlocking, which are sort of representative of a keychain, like when you go to your house. And then the two hearts are basically, an agent and a homeowner, a property owner, or it could be either. But the idea is that we're in this together as an industry to do good work for the community. And the name itself pretty much says it. And once we had that look, we started working with Jeremy and Megan, as Mary mentioned, to find lots of good footage on your social platforms of what the good deeds are. So because we wanted this to have a grassroots advocacy feel, and we really didn't want to show a lot of stock photography because there seems to be a certain amount of disingenuousness from that. So we wanted the Good Deeds Foundation to be 100% authentic. And so that when we promoted the good deeds ideas, it was all about using imagery from you, the members. And some of the imagery probably wasn't as sharp or probably wasn't as clear when it comes to a professional standpoint. That's okay. That's what we were looking for. What was important is that we're able to get the authenticity and the stories that were happening all over America and get them out and have them told in an interesting and smart way. And so as people saw that, it gave grist to the mill that we could grow good deeds. And I think right now, Mary, you correct me if I'm wrong, but or maybe Jeremy, you know better. I thought that you have like 40 applications right now on your plate on to decide where to allocate some of the Good Deeds Foundation money.
Yeah, absolutely. It was great. When we began the foundation, I remember talking to Diane, and Diane had some experience from a former life of working and launching a foundation. And I remember her saying to us, you know, there's two big challenges: one, getting it up and running, or maybe three: one, getting it running; one, fundraising; and then one, actually trying to give the money away. And she said, you may find that's actually more challenging than the other two. And we were like, really? That's really hard, right? But we opened the first application process, I want to say beginning of December. Applications closed at the end of January. And I'd say we thought, well, maybe we'll get 5 or 6 in this first iteration, you know. And I think we were, Jeremy, you'll know the exact number, but we're close to 50 applications that we got. And those applications, you know, have come from you, our members, in support of local charities that you support in your particular area. And that's just incredible. I mean, I can tell you our Good Deeds board has been spending time going through the applications. We're still going through them, quite frankly. It's just amazing that the breadth of different charities that our industry supports in those local areas. And all I would ask, you know, the audience today is, you know, again, it's kind of like going back to the campaign before we started. You know, we just do what we do, right? And we weren't as good at telling our story. We just did stuff. And I think the Good Deeds is really the same thing. You know, our industry's always been doing these things. You've always been supporting your local charities. You've always been out there in the community helping. Just don't talk about it, you just do it, right? And part of Good Deeds is really to, again, really amp up and tell that story. And, you know, I'm excited about sort of the next iteration as we keep moving Good Deeds forward. You know, certainly we'll go through this first application process and the issuance of the grants, and I'll certainly encourage everybody to keep applying and keep sending your information in. And I know Jeremy would echo, you know, all the information and the great posts that we saw during the COVID time. And I know we're still in the COVID time, right? You know, don't lose that. Continue to send us your information and your stories and what you're supporting. You know, I think also when I go back to the name and the logo, I mean, I have to tell you, we love this logo. I mean, it was just every single person who was involved in the beginning of Good Deeds. I mean, we all jumped on this one at the same time. We were like, that's it, that's it. And it's amazing to think about, you know, we launched in October. So this foundation, this name has actually become sort of like it just exists. I mean, I hear other people from outside our industry say, oh, I saw that Alta does that Good Deeds thing. That's really awesome. You know, the fact that we've gotten brand recognition around what you guys do every day is, I think, just tells that good story. And I know Jim Scott won't toot his own horn, so I'm going to do it for him. Not only was this logo fantastic, but this logo also got the attention, and I'll get the name wrong, so please, you do have to correct me, but of a PR award for, or at least to be up for a PR award for this particular logo, and it's not related to our industry. I mean, it's, you know, everybody out there, Coke, Pepsi, all those are all fighting each other for this great award, but I know he won't mention it, so I will. So that's how good this logo was.
But the important thing is, like Mary said, is you're doing all the good stuff. We just have to give you all the megaphone.
You did, and we appreciate that very much. So, you know, maybe we could pivot a little in the time we have left. And I know for a lot of our members, you know, as Diane mentioned, you know, you guys are artists when it comes to being able to really amp up, tell story, get recognition, and figure out what you do. But, you know, for most of us, you know, we know how to do what we do. We don't really know as much how to do what you do. And so it'd be really great to maybe turn back to you and say, so what do we do from here? How do we as title agents and in a title community, how do we use this tell your story, you know, to drive recognition, business, not acknowledgement, but, you know, really just make ourselves more visual. And we wondered if we could pick your brain, as that's your expertise, of what do we do?
And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them. And what you can see on screen right now is how you can get involved. And what happened early on is that, you know, once we would post something, is that it would be forwarded, like I said earlier, by you, and then you'd add your own, personal story. You would add, your own twist of phrase to that, which made it nice. It made it personal because, we can create the brand look, but you're going to customize it for your audiences and your personality, and your specific audiences. And then one of the things we're going to do after, there's a leave behind, as you can kind of see in the handouts down there. This is really how you can take and tell your story on a micro level. We presented the macro level of, what the overall branding campaign. This is how you can take the assets that are on a certain page of Alta's website, download them, and then share them on your social media platforms. And we've given you copy to use for Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And our digital team has helped write the copy down to the word count and using hashtags and thinking about the line breaks. But we wanted it to be as prescriptive as possible so that you could feel that you had the opportunity to well, what we're trying to say is that we know you're busy and we want to make your job a little bit easier in giving you this work.
I think it's great, and I really encourage you to go to the Alta website and go to the Tell Your Story section, because you'll find all this great material there. And I think you put it so well. Everybody's crazy busy, which is just a blessing, and that's wonderful time that the business is as strong as it is. But I think the telling your story, especially today, where we are still in this sort of COVID environment, it becomes more and more important. And if you do it now, you're really setting good seeds and foundation for tomorrow, right? It's not necessarily about right now. And I know people are like, oh, I'm so busy, I don't have time. And, but, markets shift and markets change, and getting the consistency of your name out there and your messaging out there is going to be more and more important as we move forward. And, as Jim Scott mentioned before, to me, social media and using social, it's a really inexpensive way of getting a consistency in your message out there. But just like you said, it's just not our area of expertise. So these resources that Marathon have put together for Alta to provide to you, literally you can just cut and paste and pop it in there, and just get you don't have to rethink everything. So I really do encourage you to go there, take a look. I think what I've learned from Marathon is, don't be afraid to be real and authentic. And, I think those are the two words that people really like and enjoy. They like to do business with who you are. So, I don't know about you, I learn everything from my young nephews and nieces, right, who say, Mary, they don't care what you think about, the world politics, but they're really fascinated what you drank at Starbucks this morning. So, it's just, you make it personal, but this gives you a great starting point, I think, to really make it personal for yourselves, and pull this information together. Or going back to the campaign where, choose who you are, find something like you mentioned Bill, was a goalie. So that's a perfect ad for Bill, or not for Bill, but for his company if he was to use it in that environment. But any other thoughts around other ways that the agent can utilize these resources? Obviously on their individual social medias, but the videos are great. So do you think utilizing them is a good methodology?
I think that's great. And, I noticed that there's a question from Joyce, and it says, are you going to give us ideas on how to tell our story to realtors and lenders? That's who you're talking to. Well, this how-to guide works really well in there, and that Joyce or anybody else, when you write a post, feel free to tag, Morningstar Realtor or, Moby Dick Lender, or whoever it is, but, add their hashtag, put their @sign. That's a really quick and easy way to get their attention on social media. So, but of course you need something to share. And so, like Mary said, the videos, any of the social posts, just forwarding them is really going to begin your conversation and allow you to amplify your voice.
And to Joyce's point, how do you get to that particular audience? What is it you're actually trying to get to them, right? You know, your own closing experience, how you do things within your office, how you do closings, things that differentiate you, how you're doing remote closings, what you're doing to keep people safe, how do you make that transaction easier. I personally find testimonials are fantastic, right? You know, if you can get permission from the people you're working with to, you know, it could even be, you know, videoing a 2-second testimonial of, hey, I just finished my closing with Joyce. Awesome, best fun I've had in forever. Least stressful experience I've had. But then getting that information, posting it everywhere. I think that, you know, I think as title professionals, and I know I feel this, I think, well, does anybody really care? Is anybody even listening, right? You'll be amazed at how much people listen, and the more you do it, the more people listen, and the more followers, the more people go, oh, I wonder what Joyce is up to today. Definitely, you know, I think again, it's just personalizing, and then like Jim Scott said, you know, tagging, you know, to where they would be or them themselves, I think is really important.
You know, another thing to suggest too is that since closing day is really the Super Bowl of, you know, of what you do, you know, one idea is to even get a step and repeat where you've got your logo just repeated 1,000 times, just like on a piece of fabric, and getting people who come by and actually sign to take their picture in front of that step and repeat. And that's where you can post it on social media. And of course, you're not going to get everybody to do that, but it does give away, you know, closing day is a happy experience for the most people, and getting them to be in front of there, you know, and show their house keys is an exciting way to demonstrate how you're sharing the love and strengthening your brand and building communities.
Do you find, a question I would have on that same front is, it seems like video and photo and, you know, pivoting more towards like an Instagram type post seems to be, you know, a bit of a shift that's certainly been happening over the last year as we're getting a lot more visual. You know, is that a good methodology for our members?
100%. I mean, from what we've learned and the way we look at our analytics and metrics when we survey everything and look at optimization, we found that every post needs to have some sort of strong visual. Those are the ones that get bumped up, that get pushed up by Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter. So we always add an image in every post that we do. Now there are a couple ways of doing that. One is if you have an organic photo, you can put a lot of copy on that photo. But if it's a paid message, you got to be, and I'm getting in the weeds here, but you have to be very careful that you abide by the 20% rule. That means that it can't be all copy. So generally, we try to keep the post, if it's a picture, mostly visual, and then the post copy actually does all the heavy lifting of all the copy and the important sell points that you want to make.
And you may take a look. I know some of you know, our customers and our agents are getting some really good feedback using LinkedIn, obviously, as a method of marketing. And you know, there is actually some really good available assistance on LinkedIn marketing. You know, if you go behind and do the professional LinkedIn, right? It's not super expensive. There's a ton of webinars back there and seminars back there on, you know, how to post, what gets the most notice. So, you know, that may be something you want to take a good look at and take a look at, you know, how you might utilize that. And then also, you know, really short videos on a topic. I mean, when I say short, I mean like really short, right? Everybody's got an attention span of like this, right? But you know, you could become the expert that, you know, hey, it's Monday, and every Monday, you know, I see this you know, video on LinkedIn from Bob, and Bob always has something interesting to talk about. And it could be, you know, one very small item, but you know, again, I think it's getting you out there, it's getting your information out there, and getting you to be a go-to person that people say, I want to go see what they're doing. So, you know, it's a little intimidating, probably not for Jim Scott, but I know for some of us, it's a little intimidating. But the more you get used to it, you'll be amazed at the responses you get. And you know what? I mean, just throw it out there and, you know, get your iPhone, do a quick video and, you know, throw it out on LinkedIn. And, you know, that all of a sudden people will be following you along there.
And you also learn by doing that. You can read the comments about what people are saying, you know, what people are responding to. And also, you can put some money, what we call boosting, put a few dollars. It doesn't have to be a lot of dollars. It could be 50, it could be $100 behind a post, just so that more people see it on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn. And that can go a long way as well.
Jeremy, are there any other questions?
Some are coming in, but great overview of the Tell Our Story campaign and what Alta's doing, and then really breaking it down so it's not so daunting for title agent here in Columbus, Ohio. How do I make this useful for me? So Jim Scott, TikTok, should the title insurance industry be doing any TikToks, short little 30-second spots?
Whatever it takes to get your promotion out there, that's great. But the thing of it is, if it's TikTok, what we've learned is that TikTok is an entertainment platform by and large. So if you're going to do something with TikTok, it better be with music. And so if you're going to be signing papers all day, do you have somebody just signing, and just think of a song? I like to think of a song first, or an idea first, and then kind of execute from there. And generally, maybe the younger people in your office, maybe they know that platform a little bit better, and you can give them awards to create like a TikTok video. So, I don't put the burden on yourself. If you've got a staff, open it up, because people love to share, and people want to own property, and they want to own your property, and they want to feel like they're invested. So have fun with TikTok.
Yeah, you could immerse yourself in the social media. Yeah, there's lots of time you could devote there.
And I will say one thing. This may be completely obvious, but I'll just say it just to say it. Just based on what we've seen, I would make yourself politically agnostic. That probably sounds very obvious, but it seems like everything is politics these days. Your job is to protect homes and sell homes to Republicans, to Democrat, to Whigs, to everybody out there. And so, because we've seen a lot of stuff backfire when people become too political, and I think that you probably want to stay away from that area.
Yeah, I mean, you guys mentioned it earlier. The social media posts that really resonate with our members or our followers are pictures of people, smiling faces. From our conventions, we'll post pictures from the receptions or from sessions, and people focused and listening, and those are always the most engaging. And so identify as you said, your customers if they're willing, or your employees, highlight them, things that they may be doing in their communities, and then you can make that connection with the realtors, as you guys also said. If you tag them, hashtag or whatever, but really talk to your customers, figure out what is important to them, and then amplify that. As Mary had said, the different types of closings you offer, whether it's just a drive-by closing that you're doing now, or if you can offer remote online notarization, those are all little things that you can use to differentiate yourself from others in the marketplace that may not offer RON. And then also wire transfer fraud, big deal still. What kind of services do you offer that ensure the funds are secure and making it to the destination, the account that they need to go to?
To that point, Jeremy, and something I didn't cover today, but because last year was just such an insane year, we did so much work. I mean, we started with COVID, then we went to our title as protection, then we moved to a campaign about wire transfer fraud. So if you're doing stuff on wire transfer fraud, you all are, because you're all protecting it. You all know that everything's digital now. But on the website, you can download assets that talk about wire transfer fraud and personalize them for yourself.
And you guys also alluded that this is not a kind of a one campaign, we're done. Definitely, this is a marketing effort. Essentially, we've got to have that pond ripple effect, and we've already got some cool things lined up for 2021. We have a awesome closing day video kind of in our back pocket that we'll promote, because for the home buyer, the consumer, that really is a celebration day for them. That's part of the process they really identify with. Not so much the title insurance policy, but we can highlight that closing day and celebrate it, and then we will use that to promote in 2021. And then we're also working with Jim Scott's team on a survey to put out in the field of DC stakeholders. We're trying to identify some regulators at the state level and survey them to see what do they think about us. And, we'll be able to use that feedback to help us delineate where we need to go, what we need to say going forward. Just as a reminder, questions, submit them in the questions box. We have a few more minutes. Sorry, Jim.
There is one question there that probably Mary or Jeremy can answer. Is the foundation encouraging solicitation of home buyer, seller, realtor, and lender charitable contributions prior to and at the time of closings or listings? That comes from Mark Cruffman.
Yeah, I think right now, Jeremy, you may know this, but during the first year of the foundation, our solicitation has to be from within our industry and our membership. Right? We can't solicit outside right now. I think ultimately that changes, but it's just a very technical requirement as we got the foundation started up. So hopefully one day, right, we'll pivot outside of that and be able to get a wider audience. And so yes, we hope to do that one day, but not today. I will sort of do a quick plug for the foundation, as I know some of our customers, some of our agents around the country have sort of tied some of their Good Deeds Foundation fundraising to their closing. So some of them are like, for every policy I'm going to donate $1, or for every closing I'm going to donate $2, right? And it literally can be $1 a closing, or whatever you think is appropriate, or whatever you feel like you would want to do. So yes, please keep it coming. We do have Jeremy and his team. We have great logos that you can add to your signature lines and your websites of a foundation member or a particular contributor to Good Deeds. And then as we do move out and give some of this money back to the communities, and that is what this foundation is designed to do, right? Is to absolutely go back and give to your communities for charities that you either participate in or you give time to, or any of those things. We'll want to amp all that up as well, from telling your story in your local community on Good Deeds. But thank you for the question. We'll let you know as soon as we can widen it, but keep the contributions coming. Thank you.
Yeah, if you're looking for more information about the Good Deeds Foundation, the URL is alsogooddeeds.org. Background information on the foundation. There's a page on charitable grants, the application process, the deadlines. There's two periods where we accept applications. So if you're interested, check out that website. Also, Mary had mentioned the hashtag Good Deeds. Yeah, we did a lot last fall through the holidays. That doesn't mean we want to stop. We want to amplify what you're doing. Please send me your stories. Just a little summary of what you've done, who you've given to, what charitable organization you're supporting. Any pictures you may have captured, we'll post them on our blog. On Title News Online, we like to highlight them and share them with others. So, and that way you can also share on any platforms you have as well. So. Email me any of your good deeds, jyowie@alta.org. I haven't seen any other. Oh,
there's one more from Gina. I can't pronounce the last name, but it's, do you believe that is value in doing live Facebook videos when out in the field as a BDO rep? I'm not sure what BDO rep means.
I'm not sure either. For title, BDO rep for title. Anyways, do you believe there's value in live Facebook videos when you're in the field? Maybe Jim Scott, live Facebook videos?
100%. I mean, you just want to have a strategy behind it. The thing, you just don't want to just kind of, you have to figure out, what's the purpose of it, who you're talking to, and what you need to say. So, for example, if you're at an event or something like that, I think it would be probably good, or maybe Facebook Live on what to prepare for in your next closing. So that might be nice. But I always try to make sure that the strategy fits the audience there.
There, Bob, Business Development Officer. There we go.
Okay.
And
all right.
Jeremy, one last quick thing. Jim Scott, you mentioned this a little earlier, and I meant to mention it and I forgot about it. One of the things that all our members are challenged with right now is finding staff, right? We're growing, we're getting, I mean, everybody's going crazy, right? And trying to find and bring people into the industry. So I would also, encourage our membership to use the campaigns and use the good deeds campaigns, right? In your recruiting, right? If you're going to bring people in from outside the industry, understanding in a very quick, simple, visual way, what our industry does and how our industry gives back. It's really important to the growth of new personnel in our business. So don't forget, use this as well in your recruiting, not just in your marketing campaigns for your particular, customers, whether it's a realtor or a lender. I went somewhere recently, they said the biggest single competitive area right now is finding long-term personnel. So I just wanted to throw that out there as well.
Yep, and whatever you're doing, and you got, just to reiterate what you guys said, personalize it and make it genuine.